The cemetery was silent except for the sound of a grown man breaking apart. Malcolm Reed, one of the most powerful black billionaires in the country, knelt in the damp grass before a small marble headstone, his shoulders shaking as tears streamed down his face. His tailored black coat was soaked to the knees, but he didn't notice. Nothing existed to him in that moment except the name carved into the stone. Ariel Naomi Reed, beloved daughter, forever 9. Malcolm pressed his palm against the cold marble like he was trying to feel a heartbeat through it. I failed you, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I was supposed to protect you. 6 months earlier, Malcolm Reed had everything. He had grown up the son of a warehouse loader and a school cleaner, raised in a cramped apartment where ambition was the only luxury. He had worked relentlessly, through racism, rejection, and exhaustion, until he became a real estate titan with holdings across multiple states. His name appeared in business magazines. His face was recognized. His success was undeniable. But none of it mattered anymore. 6 months ago, a fire had torn through the guest house on his estate. By the time firefighters arrived, the structure was reduced to ash. Investigators claimed the charred remains found inside belonged to Malcolm's 9-year-old daughter, Ariel. They called it an electrical fault. Malcolm called it the day his soul died. The funeral drew hundreds, politicians, executives, community leaders, but Malcolm barely remembered it. He remembered standing at the grave, unable to cry, unable to breathe, unable to accept a world where his daughter no longer existed. Since then, he had lost weight. His suits hung loosely on a frame that no longer carried confidence. He stopped going to the office. His younger brother, Victor, handled the company's affairs. His wife, Lenora, made sure Malcolm took his medication, drank his tea, and slept. Every Saturday morning, without fail, Malcolm drove alone to Greenwood Cemetery. And every Saturday, he collapsed in front of that grave. This morning was no different. The autumn wind whispered through dying trees as Malcolm lowered himself to his knees. His fingers traced his daughter's name again and again, as if memorizing it could somehow bring her back. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, voice cracking. "I don't know how to live without you." He didn't know that less than 20 feet away, behind the thick trunk of an old oak tree, someone was watching him. A small girl. Thin, dirty, shaking, alive. Ariel Reed stood frozen, her breath shallow, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would give her away. Her sneakers were torn. Her hoodie hung off her like it belonged to someone else. 6 months of captivity had stripped the softness from her face, replacing it with something older, sharper. But it was her, very much alive. For half a year, Ariel had been held in an abandoned farmhouse deep in the woods, nearly 2 hours from the city. Her prison was a small room with a mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner, and a single window nailed shut. A man she never learned the name of brought her food twice a day. He locked the door every time. She didn't know why she had been taken. She only knew she was pulled from her bed the night of the fire, drugged, and driven away in darkness. Fear became her teacher. She learned the guard's habits, his footsteps, his moods, the nights he drank until he passed out. She memorized the layout of the house from the sound alone. 3 weeks ago, he dropped the key. It slid under the door. She waited. Last night, when the snoring started, Ariel unlocked the door and ran. She ran through darkness, through thorns, through pain. Her feet bled. Her lungs burned. She followed instinct stars, distant road sounds, anything that pointed her toward home. By dawn, she reached the city. She had only one thought: find Daddy. But she couldn't go home. During her captivity, she had overheard conversations. Phone calls. A woman's voice on speakerphone, calm, cold, precise. She knew that voice. It belonged to Lenora. "She doesn't know anything," the man had said once. "Good," Lenora replied. "She stays hidden. We might need her later." Another time, "He's getting weaker," the man reported. "The medicine is working," Lenora answered. "A few more months. Maybe less." Ariel didn't fully understand poison, but she understood death. Her stepmother was slowly killing her father and keeping her alive as leverage. So Ariel came to the only place she knew Malcolm would be. his daughter's grave. Now she watched him crumble before it. Watched the strongest man she knew beg the ground to forgive him. Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to run to him, but fear rooted her to the spot. What if someone was watching? What if Lenora had people following him? What if stepping forward meant losing him forever? Then Malcolm said the words that shattered her hesitation. "I don't want to be here anymore, Ariel," he whispered to the stone. "Maybe it's time I join you." Ariel's heart stopped. Her father wanted to die. If she didn't act now, she would lose him, not to poison, but to despair. She stepped out from behind the tree. "Daddy," the word was barely a whisper, but in the stillness of the cemetery, it sounded like thunder. Malcolm froze. His breath caught. Slowly, impossibly, he turned, and there she was, standing in the morning light, alive. Malcolm staggered to his feet, disbelief written across his face. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't real." "It's me," Ariel said, tears streaming. "I'm here." Malcolm crossed the distance in seconds, dropping to his knees in front of her. His hands hovered near her shoulders, afraid to touch. "I'm dreaming," he said. "I have to be." Ariel took his trembling hands and pressed them against her cheeks. "I'm real, Daddy." Malcolm broke. He pulled her into his arms and sobbed like a man brought back from the dead. And behind them, the grave that was never meant to exist stood quietly, waiting for its lie to be exposed. Malcolm Reed held Ariel tightly, feeling the weight of 6 months of fear, uncertainty, and pain melt away in his daughter's small hands. But there was no time to celebrate. Danger still lingered, invisible but lethal, and every second counted. "I'm alive, Daddy," she whispered, shivering. "I escaped. I ran. But they'll come looking for me if they know." Malcolm's heart tightened. His own wife, his brother, people he had trusted. They were capable of murder. And now he had to act. Fast. He lowered his voice. "Ariel, listen to me very carefully. We can't go home. Not yet. You can't let them know you're alive." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. Despite everything, she had already learned what fear demanded. Control. Survival. Smarts beyond her years. They walked quietly to a secluded street, the early morning fog curling around them like a shroud. Malcolm made a quick call on a burner phone. The line clicked, and then a familiar voice answered. Firm, calm, unwavering. "Malcolm." "David," he said. "I need you. Now. Alone. No one else." An hour later, David Callahan, Malcolm's personal attorney and trusted friend for over 2 decades, arrived at a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building had been abandoned for years, its windows dusty, its doors creaking, but Malcolm didn't care. He didn't need luxury. He needed safety. David stepped out of his car, and his eyes fell on the girl beside Malcolm. He froze, mouth slightly open, disbelief etched on his face. "She's alive?" he whispered. Malcolm nodded. 6 months. They held her captive. "My wife, my brother, poisoning me slowly. Everything's been a trap. And now, David, we need a plan." David's face went from shock to fury in seconds. "If we go to the police now, Lenora will be tipped off. The moment you claim she's alive, they'll disappear with her, and your life will be at risk. We need strategy, precision, and patience." Malcolm clenched his fists. "Then we wait. And watch." David nodded. "We build the case. We gather proof. Cameras, audio, records. Every step they take, every lie they tell, we document it." For the next 3 weeks, Malcolm and Ariel lived in shadows. They were ghosts. Ariel stayed at David's private apartment, safe, hidden from cameras and curious eyes. She slept, ate, and recovered, but she also endured endless hours alone. She couldn't leave. She couldn't talk to anyone. Every visit from her father was a calculated risk. At home, Malcolm returned to his public facade. The grieving widower. The broken billionaire. Lenora played her part perfectly, pouring tea, offering dinners, feigning concern. Every gesture she made was calculated, and Malcolm learned to detect the poison behind the smiles. Every sip, every bite was carefully disposed of, poured into potted plants, flushed down toilets, scraped into napkins. Meanwhile, cameras David had provided captured everything. Tiny, discreet devices in smoke detectors, picture frames, electrical outlets. Every conversation, every subtle hint of greed. And then the moment came. Victor, Malcolm's own brother, visited the estate. A man Malcolm had trusted, had placed in power out of familial loyalty. A man whose jealousy festered quietly beneath his carefully maintained facade. Victor and Lenora spoke freely in the living room, assuming Malcolm was asleep upstairs. "The doctor says he's deteriorating faster now," Lenora said casually. "Another month, maybe 6 weeks." Victor smirked. "I'm tired of waiting. Once he's gone, we can finally deal with the girl. She's a loose end. She can't exist when the estate is settled." Malcolm listened in silence, fury burning hotter with every word. The betrayal was staggering. His own blood, the woman he married, conspiring to kill him and erase his daughter, all for money. David leaned closer. "We move carefully now. We build the evidence. Then we strike." Malcolm nodded. "I understand. But can I really go through with this? Pretend to be dead?" David's expression was unyielding. "You have to. Lenora and Victor are counting on that. If you die publicly, even faked, they'll make mistakes. They'll slip. And when they do, we hit them with everything. Completely undeniable evidence." Malcolm exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Then it begins. We wait and we watch. Every move they make, every word they say. No slip-ups." Ariel hugged his side, sensing his tension. "I can wait," she said softly. "I survived 6 months. I could do a few more weeks if it keeps us safe." Malcolm's chest tightened with a mixture of pride and sorrow. His daughter, only 9, had endured horrors that no adult should face, and yet she remained resolute, focused, and brave. The plan unfolded perfectly over the following days. Lenora and Victor grew careless, speaking openly of their intentions, unaware that every word, every gesture was recorded. Ariel's safety was paramount, but Malcolm's act had to be flawless. He returned home each day, carefully portraying grief, weakness, and despair, while disposing of any food or drink intended to harm him. And then, 10 days into surveillance, the final piece of the puzzle revealed itself. Victor and Lenora's conversation, captured crystal clear on hidden microphones, laid bare the entire conspiracy. Kidnapping, attempted murder, inheritance manipulation. Their words left no doubt. Malcolm's jaw tightened as he listened. David leaned over, hand on his shoulder. "It's time," he said. "They've fallen into the trap. Every word, every action, it's all recorded. Justice will come." Malcolm exhaled slowly. For the first time in 6 months, he felt a spark of hope. The nightmare wasn't over, but the fight was finally in his hands. And Ariel, perched safely in David's apartment, hugged a small pillow and whispered to herself, "We survived. And now we fight back." The day of the plan's execution arrived, and Malcolm Reed felt the weight of months of deception pressing down on him. He adjusted his suit in the mirror, forcing a semblance of normalcy. The grief-stricken billionaire act had to be flawless. Every movement, every expression, every sigh, calculated. Ariel, safely hidden in David Callahan's apartment, clutched a stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her small hands were pale, trembling slightly, but her eyes were sharp. She had been part of the plan from the start, learning patience, observation, and the subtleties of deception at 9 years old. David handed her a small recorder. "Just in case," he said. Ariel nodded, understanding without hesitation. Meanwhile, Malcolm returned to the Reed estate, a grand mansion adorned with expensive art and tasteful furniture. It felt eerily familiar, yet contaminated by betrayal. Lenora greeted him at the door, her eyes shimmering with fake concern. "Malcolm, darling, how are you feeling today?" she asked, voice syrupy. He forced a weak smile. "Not great. I miss Ariel so much. I don't know how I'll go on without her." Lenora's lips twitched slightly, a smile almost imperceptible. Every word, every glance, was carefully monitored by hidden cameras. Malcolm poured the tea she offered, carefully disposing of it behind the kitchen counter. He ate sparingly, making it appear as though grief had taken his appetite. Days passed in this delicate balance. Each evening, Lenora would attempt to poison him subtly, her own methodical gestures disguised as care, but Malcolm avoided every trap. He listened, he watched, he waited. Victor Harrison, his brother, grew impatient. One evening, he stopped by unexpectedly, striding into the grand living room as if he owned the place. "Malcolm," he said, feigning sadness. "You look frail. The loss of Ariel has really taken its toll, hasn't it?" Malcolm nodded silently, hiding his rage. Victor continued, "It's difficult, planning for the estate when you're so weakened. Lenora's been doing her best to take care of you." Every word Victor spoke, every glance, every pause was recorded by Malcolm's hidden devices. The evidence was mounting. In the meantime, Ariel continued her studies at David's apartment. Her small frame moved through the space cautiously, alert to every sound, every shadow. She drew maps of the estate, traced the routes taken by Lenora and Victor, memorized every step, every timing. For a 9-year-old, she was a strategist, a tiny general planning a battle for her family's survival. Then came the breakthrough. One evening, Victor and Lenora argued on the phone, unaware that Malcolm's hidden recorder captured everything: the conspiracy, the threats, the final steps to seize control of the estate. "They've nearly fallen asleep," Lenora said, a trace of frustration in her voice. "Soon, we can remove him permanently. And the girl, she's just insurance." Victor's voice was icy. "Don't worry. Once the estate is settled, she won't be a problem. I've made arrangements." Malcolm's heart pounded. The evidence was undeniable. The trap had worked. They had been careless, overconfident, and now it was time to act. David Callahan arrived at the estate just after midnight. In the shadows, Malcolm and David whispered, reviewing the final steps of their plan. They would fake Malcolm's collapse, stage his death, and ensure that Lenora and Victor's greed would expose them completely. The next morning, the scene unfolded perfectly. Malcolm staggered through the grand hall, clutching his chest, as Lenora screamed in horror. Paramedics arrived within minutes, summoned by her frantic calls. Cameras were already rolling, news helicopters circling above, reporting live on the apparent tragedy. "Heart attack," one paramedic said. "We're doing everything we can." Lenora's tears were real, or at least perfectly timed. She cradled Malcolm's limp body, whispering prayers as if the cameras couldn't capture the cold calculation beneath. Victor paced nervously, oblivious to the hidden microphones capturing every word, every intention. By the afternoon, Malcolm's body was declared dead. The funeral arrangements were underway, the media swarming, and Lenora's victory seemed complete. But behind the scenes, Malcolm was very much alive, hidden in a private medical suite with the doctor who owed him a life debt. Ariel sat beside him, her small hand resting on his. "They think they won," she said softly. "No," Malcolm whispered. "Not yet. We wait. They're about to make mistakes, and we'll be ready." Sure enough, Lenora and Victor began to act carelessly. They celebrated in private, discussing the estate, dividing properties, planning vacations, and even addressing the man who had held Ariel captive, a man named Ryan. Their arrogance was their undoing. Ryan, unaware that authorities and Malcolm were monitoring him, admitted everything: the kidnapping, the captivity, and the instructions he had received. His confession sealed the evidence needed to bring down Lenora and Victor. Malcolm and David meticulously compiled the evidence: audio recordings, video footage, witness statements, and Ryan's confession. Every piece fit together like a puzzle revealing the full scope of Lenora and Victor's crimes. Finally, the day arrived. The inheritance hearing in the downtown courthouse was a media spectacle. Reporters, cameras, and news vans crowded the streets, all eager to witness the billionaire's fortune being claimed by Lenora and Victor. Inside, the courtroom was tense. Lenora, immaculate in black, dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Victor sat beside her, rehearsed grief etched on his face. Their attorneys presented documents, death certificates, and claims with perfect poise. Malcolm and Ariel entered quietly, flanked by David and 2 FBI agents. The doors opened, and the courtroom froze. Cameras snapped, microphones caught every gasp, and Lenora's pen clattered to the floor as color drained from her face. Malcolm stood tall, his presence commanding the room. Ariel, clutching his hand, radiated courage and defiance beyond her years. "I think," Malcolm said, voice cutting through the stunned silence, "there may be some objections after all." The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But Malcolm's eyes never left Lenora and Victor, who sat frozen, realizing their meticulous plans had failed. David approached the bench, presenting the folder of evidence. "Your Honor, I represent Malcolm Reed, who is alive and well. We also present irrefutable evidence that Lenora Reed and Victor Reed conspired to kidnap Mr. Reed's daughter, poison him, and commit fraud to inherit his estate." The judge reviewed the documents, and the truth was undeniable. Lenora and Victor were taken into custody immediately. Their web of deception collapsed in a single, stunning courtroom moment. Malcolm pulled Ariel close. In that instant, surrounded by chaos, cameras, and shocked spectators, all that mattered was the warm hand of his daughter in his. They had survived. They had endured. And they had finally struck back. The dust had barely settled from the courtroom chaos, yet the emotional battlefield was far from over. Malcolm Reed and his daughter Ariel returned to their estate, a place filled with memories, luxury, and betrayal. Every corner whispered of deception, every room a reminder of what had almost been lost. The first night back was the hardest. Ariel clung to her father's side as they crossed the grand foyer. The mansion looked the same, gleaming floors, polished wood, ornate chandeliers, but nothing felt normal. The air was heavy with unspoken history, the weight of months of captivity, fear, and manipulation pressing down on them. I don't know if I can go upstairs yet," Ariel admitted, voice trembling. Her small hands held tightly onto his. Malcolm knelt to meet her eyes. "You don't have to be strong anymore. Not with me. Not ever again. Whatever you're feeling, fear, anger, sadness, it's okay. I'm here." Ariel's composure cracked. Tears that had been held back for weeks fell freely. She collapsed into her father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Malcolm held her, rocking gently, allowing her to release the trauma of 6 long months. Words were useless here. Presence was enough. They didn't go upstairs that night. Instead, they made a nest of blankets and pillows in the living room, sleeping side by side as they had when Ariel was smaller and afraid of thunderstorms. It wasn't convenient, nor practical, but it was necessary for their healing. Healing was slow, painstaking, and often invisible. Malcolm hired a child psychologist specializing in trauma to help Ariel process the months she had been imprisoned. Nightmares plagued her sleep, and panic attacks visited unexpectedly. But there were also small victories. A laugh over a silly television show, helping her father cook dinner, moments of calm where she could finally breathe without fear. Malcolm attended therapy sessions too, privately. He had always been the unshakable force, the provider, the problem solver. Learning to acknowledge vulnerability was harder than any real estate deal he had ever closed. Yet he did it for Ariel, for himself, for the fragile but promising life they were beginning to rebuild together. A month after the courtroom confrontation, Malcolm and Ariel returned to Oakwood Cemetery. The autumn had deepened, branches were nearly bare, and the ground was covered with a carpet of brown and gold leaves. The grave that had haunted Malcolm's dreams for 6 months was before them. Ariel Grace Reed, beloved daughter, forever 9. The grave was empty. It had always been empty. Malcolm set a sledgehammer beside it. "I used to kneel here every week," he said, voice low, "begging for God to let me die so I could be with you again. This stone, this lie almost destroyed me." Ariel traced the letters of her own name with trembling fingers. "They wanted to bury me, not just in the ground, but in everyone's memory. They wanted to erase me. But you didn't let them." "Neither did you," Malcolm replied softly. He handed her the hammer. It was heavy for her small hands, but this wasn't about power, it was about closure. Swing after swing, Ariel brought down chunks of the marble. Malcolm finished the destruction, ensuring nothing remained of the monument that had symbolized their suffering. They stood in silence afterward, breathing hard, staring at the rubble. "I wasn't born to be buried, Daddy," Ariel said, voice carrying strength beyond her years. Malcolm's heart swelled with pride and sorrow. Pride for her courage, sorrow for the innocence that had been stolen from her. He knelt and held her hands. "And I will live to protect you every single day for the rest of my life." For the first time in months, Ariel smiled genuinely. She had endured darkness, survived it, and now the light was hers to reclaim. The weeks that followed were filled with interviews, police statements, and legal follow-ups, though Malcolm refused to be a spectacle. He wanted no media frenzy, no public spectacle. All that mattered was Ariel and the life they would rebuild together. Lenora and Victor faced justice. They were charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Ryan, the man who had held Ariel captive, was arrested trying to flee the state. He confessed, providing the final pieces of evidence that ensured Lenora and Victor would never harm anyone again. Even with justice served, Malcolm and Ariel's lives were forever changed. Trust, safety, and innocence could not be fully restored. Every creak in the house, every shadow, was a reminder of months lost to fear. Therapy, patience, and love became their constant companions. One crisp November morning, Malcolm and Ariel returned to Oakwood Cemetery again. The leaves rustled in the wind, the sky gray but hopeful. They walked through familiar paths until they reached the spot where the false grave had stood. Malcolm knelt beside her. "This was almost the end for us," he said. "But we survived, and we'll live every day, proving that no lie can bury the truth." Ariel reached for his hand, squeezing it. "We have a future now, Daddy. Real this time." Together, they left the cemetery behind, walking into the light of a morning that promised hope, healing, and a life reclaimed from the shadow of betrayal. The rubble of the past lay behind them. Ahead was uncertainty, yes, but also possibility, and a bond between father and daughter unbroken, unshakable, and stronger than ever. This was not the end with death. This was a story of survival, courage, and the enduring strength of family. The courtroom drama was over, but the story of Malcolm Reed and Ariel was far from finished. Lenora and Victor, the architects of their torment, had been arrested, charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Ryan, the man who had held Ariel captive, was caught at a bus station trying to flee. His confession provided the final puzzle pieces, sealing Lenora and Victor's fate. News outlets across the country ran headlines. "Black billionaire survives family betrayal. 9-year-old daughter helps expose criminal plot." Social media exploded with admiration, disbelief, and awe. Everyone wanted a glimpse into the miraculous reunion of father and daughter. Yet Malcolm had no interest in fame. He refused interview requests and media appearances. To him, the world could watch or not. He had only one priority: Ariel. Her safety, her healing, her happiness. Even so, the emotional scars ran deep. Months of isolation, fear, and the constant threat of danger had left their mark. Returning home was a test of courage. The Reed estate, though unchanged in appearance, carried the invisible weight of betrayal. Every hallway whispered. Every room held a shadow of what had happened. The first night back was tender, painful, and necessary. Ariel wanted to see her old room. Malcolm, despite his own fears, agreed. Hand in hand, they walked through the house, the echoes of past events following them silently. "You don't have to be strong anymore," Malcolm whispered, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Not with me. Not ever again. Whatever you're feeling, fear, sadness, anger, it's okay. I'm here." Ariel let her tears fall freely. 6 months of held-back emotion poured out in silent sobs. Malcolm held her through it, letting her release the trauma she had carried alone. That night, they didn't go upstairs. Instead, they created a nest of blankets and pillows in the living room, sleeping side by side like they had when Ariel was younger and frightened by storms. It was imperfect, but it was theirs. Healing required patience. Malcolm hired a child psychologist specializing in trauma. Ariel began weekly sessions, slowly processing her months of captivity. Nightmares came, panic attacks visited unexpectedly, and moments of fear lingered, but slowly, laughter and light returned. Malcolm also attended private therapy. The man who had always been the protector and problem solver now learned vulnerability, facing his own trauma to be stronger for Ariel. Together, they rebuilt a life, one small step at a time. 1 month after the courtroom revelation, Malcolm and Ariel returned to Oakwood Cemetery. The season had deepened. Leaves covered the ground in shades of amber and gold. The false grave that had haunted Malcolm's dreams stood before them. "This grave, it almost destroyed us," Malcolm said. "But we survived. And now, we'll live every day proving that no lie can bury the truth." Ariel reached out, tracing the letters of her name on the marble remnants before it was finally demolished. "They wanted to erase me, Daddy, but you didn't let them. And I didn't let them either." Together, they brought down the final pieces of the monument. Malcolm held Ariel's hands as she swung the sledgehammer. When the job was done, only rubble remained. In that moment, a sense of closure washed over them. "I wasn't born to be buried, Daddy," Ariel said softly. Malcolm's chest swelled with pride. "And I will protect you every single day for the rest of my life." In the weeks that followed, life began to take on a rhythm of healing. Therapy sessions, school, shared meals, quiet evenings. Each day brought a mixture of challenges and victories. The nightmares didn't vanish completely, but they became manageable. The laughter grew more frequent. Genuine smiles returned. Even the Reed estate transformed from a place of fear into a sanctuary. Malcolm reinforced security, ensured privacy, and allowed Ariel to reclaim her childhood in small ways. Together, they planted a garden, baked cookies, and spent evenings watching the sunset from the balcony. Every ordinary moment became extraordinary in the wake of extraordinary trauma. Justice had been served. Lenora and Victor were behind bars. Ryan's testimony and cooperation ensured a full account of their crimes. But the true victory was more personal. Malcolm and Ariel had survived. They had escaped death, betrayal, and despair. They had reclaimed their lives and each other. One crisp morning, Malcolm and Ariel returned once more to Oakwood Cemetery. The sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the path ahead. They walked hand in hand, leaving behind the ruins of the false grave, the memories of terror, and the whispers of betrayal. Ahead lay uncertainty, yes, but also freedom. Possibility. Hope. "This is our future, Ariel," Malcolm said. "And nothing, no one, can take it from us." Ariel smiled for the first time in months, a smile that reached her eyes, bright and unburdened. Together, father and daughter stepped into a life rebuilt, scarred but stronger, marked not by what had happened to them, but by the courage and love that had carried them through. This was not a story that ended with death. It was a story of survival, justice, and the enduring bond between a father and his daughter, a bond that no lie, no betrayal, and no darkness could ever break.